Very good. Good evening. Al, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for being here. As Al indicated, my name is Andy Freed, and I was the president of the Agua Dulce Town Council for 3 years. I'm here this evening, actually, as president of a nonprofit California public benefit corporation called Safe Action for the Environment, Inc. And SAFE formed in mid-1999 in order to work with the city of Santa Clarita and a large group of city and unincorporated residents to fight the CEMEX mine, technically referred to as the Soledad Canyon Sand and Gravel Mine. I'm sure that most of you have heard about this. This is something that's been going on, as I said, since mid-1999, so we're going on 12 years. I've left a packet of talking points on the bar in the back that anybody can grab on their way out. I'm going to cover these briefly, and then there are always a slew of questions, and usually people hit points that I haven't, so I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that I can. The CEMEX project is comprised of producing 56.1 million tons of sand and gravel. Over a period of 20 years, there are 2 federal contracts that run consecutively. The federal government only issues contracts in 10-year increments. And this was originally a project referred to as TMC, or Transit Mixed Concrete. They signed the original contract way back in December of either 1990 or 1991. We ran into an economic downward spiral. TMC held on to the thing and ultimately sold their company to an outfit called Southdown, Inc., which is based out of Houston. Southdown brought it back in 1999. They brought it back first to the communities of Acton and Agua Dulce. We, in turn, came to the city of Santa Clarita and got the city council very involved. And in the process of all of this, Southdown got tired of arguing over all of this and decided, they made a business decision to go ahead and sell themselves to one of the largest producers of aggregate and specialty mining interests in the world, a company called CEMEX, which is out of Monterrey, Mexico. This is a project that we refer to as a split estate. The actual surface of the property is owned now by the city of Santa Clarita. Everything from about 6 inches down is part of the federal mineral estate and is owned by the United States of America and is administered by the Bureau of Land Management. When I indicated earlier that CEMEX intends, if they start mining, and there is an if, to produce 56.1 million tons of material. In order to do that, they've got to move almost 76 million tons of earth. And we're talking about a mountain here. If you're going up the 14 freeway and you know where Bee Canyon is, it would be on your right as you head from Sand Canyon north. It is the mountain directly behind Bee Canyon. And it's really a beautiful mountain. And they will start at the top, in the back, and work their way down. In the first 20 years of these 2 contracts, they estimate that they will reduce the mountain by 20%. We also have in our files an interesting brochure that Southdown produced, and in it there's a fascinating line drawing of the entire mountain, and it's divided into segments. And what the segments are telling us is that in that 20-year cycle of mining, they will reduce the mountain by 20%. They also indicate that towards the end of that 20-year cycle, they anticipate that the BLM will renegotiate with them for another 2 10-year contracts. So we're not looking at just one 20-year cycle of mining, thereby reducing the mountain by 20%. What we're really looking at is the ultimate reduction of that mountain to what we call below grade, because the mountain actually ends underneath below the freeway, underneath the freeway. We're looking at the potential of 100 years of mining. They will reduce the entire mountain. What we're also looking at is the potential that other mining companies that hold mining rights along the Soledad Canyon corridor and aggregate, especially high-grade rich aggregate, which this is, has a tendency to follow the riverbeds. And so, of course, Soledad Canyon is right there following the Santa Clara River. This is a project, if you don't know where B Canyon is and where our mountain is, it's a project that's located approximately 1.5 miles from the city's eastern borders. And the area surrounding the mountain and the river has already been designated as a significant ecological area, or SEE number 23. This particular project is one of the largest sand and gravel mines to ever receive approval from the Bureau of Land Management. And they did that in what they call a record of decision, which they issued in the year 2000, August of 2000, right in the midst of a lot of litigation. And this is an area that has been in and out of litigation for a long time. It was originally mined by a local miner who felt that he had the right to mine there. He had the permission of the owners. At a certain point, a case reached the United States Supreme Court arguing whether or not aggregate, which really is nothing more than sand and gravel, it's basically dirt, whether or not sand and gravel could be considered part of the federal mineral estate. And the Supreme Court ultimately ruled that it was indeed part of the federal mineral estate as long as it was underneath federal land, or, part of federal land. So this is how we got involved with the BLM. This is how we ended up going through an entire gamut of federal litigation headed by the city of Santa Clarita. This is a project that is very transportation intensive. The cost of the aggregate itself, I no pun intended, is literally dirt cheap. What is expensive, and becoming more so, is the cost of the transportation. We tried very hard to convince Southdown and then CEMEX that the way to deal with the transportation of this material was to mine it here, and since the railroad tracks are directly across Soledad from the mining site, to build a siding and use rail haul to take the raw material from here in Santa Clarita and haul it down to an existing plant that they own in Sun Valley, clean it down there, and go ahead and crush it and get it ready for the final end user to pick up in Sun Valley. It would have kept roughly 1,164 large double-rigged sand and gravel trucks off of our freeways every day. And just so that you have a means of comparison, I'm sure you have all seen the double-rigged sand and gravel trucks on the roads. Each one of those trucks is the equivalent to 7 small cars. I've got a big Lincoln outside. These trucks are equivalent to 4 of my Lincoln Town Cars. So we're talking about the addition of an awful lot of vehicle trips on the road every day. This is also a project that will put other trucks and other vehicles onto the roads roughly 1.5 to 2 minutes, 24 hours a day. Mining is continuous, even though they'll only mine 17 hours a day. Construction starts very early in the morning, and they want their material there before they start. So pickups are all the time. They happen throughout the entire day and the evening. This is a project that will, in our opinion, cause some very, very severe air quality problems. When the EIR and the EIS, there were 2 environmental documents involved in this because the county wanted one in order to issue a surface mining permit, and the BLM wanted their own from a federal perspective. So we've got an environmental impact report from the county, and we've got an environmental impact statement from the Bureau of Land Management. And what they studied in terms of air quality was PM10. Now, PM10 is a rather large particulate matter in terms of inhaled irritants. What we have subsequently started to look at are the effects of PM 2.5 on both the human body and on animals. And we're talking about an area with an awful lot of both wildlife and large domestic animals. My wife and I personally have 3 horses up in Agua Dulce. Obviously, they're outside most of the time. So PM 2.5 is extremely dangerous. It's very, very small, and as doctors will tell you, if you inhale enough of it, your lungs can't expunge it. You can't get rid of it. It stays within your body, and it's an irritant that can cause asthma and other lung-related problems. I personally have a mild case of what's called chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, so I can tell you firsthand how difficult it becomes to breathe, you know, when the air quality up here becomes really bad. And unfortunately, according to the federal EPA, the whole Santa Clarita area, I don't care where you are, whether you're in Agua Dulce, whether you're down in Valencia, whether you're up in Castaic, the entire area has some of the worst air quality in the country. And you can look at the blue skies and delude yourself. Unfortunately, it's true. We have very, very poor air quality. And one of the things that SAFE did, we felt that as a small organization, we really weren't capable of getting involved in all of the issues, so we got primarily involved in the air quality. And we hired one of the preeminent experts in air quality and in emissions, a gentleman by the name of Bill Piazza. His company is Air Quality Dynamics. And Bill produced 2 studies for us. He produced a response to the EIR and the EIS. The county and the government came back with their responses to what we said, so we had Bill produce a response to that. And the county ultimately signed a consent decree based on a federal court ruling, and they felt so strongly about the air quality and the traffic issues that we raised that they inserted into the document something called a statement of overriding consideration for public benefit. And basically what they're saying is, we agree with you. There is going to be a serious air quality problem. There is going to be a serious traffic problem. But for the public benefit, we're going to approve this project anyway, realizing that these problems exist. This is a project that will not only excavate, but will stockpile, crush, and process sand and gravel 17 hours a day, Monday through Saturday. There's also going to be a cement plant up there that will work almost 24 hours a day. And it's going to create a lot of problems for the entire area. One of the things that they told us about air quality is that the particulate matter will basically stay on the site. And we found an interesting segment from 60 Minutes that showed us that special particulate matter that was released in Moscow ended up in New York City. So there is no way, at least in our opinion, that the particulate matter produced by this mine is going to stay confined to the mining site. It's going to blow all over the area, and it's going to impact children, it's going to impact seniors, and it's going to impact people that have impaired respiratory problems already. The city has really spearheaded this movement, this opposition. They've been incredible. As I said, they've worked with us for almost 12 years now. They have taken this thing right through to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We have lost legally at almost every step. The courts seem to want to side with the federal government, regardless of the impact on an incredibly ever-growing, community. So what can we do? For the past 5 years, the city, the various opposition groups involved, of which there are well over 110 at this point, and CEMEX have entered into what we call a truce. We've stopped basically fighting with each other and sat down and tried to figure out how we can deal with the problem so that it ceases to be a problem. And what we finally came up with was what we refer to as the legislative solution. And for the past 5 years, the city has been dealing with the various elected officials, primarily in Washington, but with the cooperation of all of the local officials, both on a local and state, county level, to push this legislation through. Congressman McKeon has actually written and dropped 6 bills into the hopper since we started working on a legislative solution. None of these bills have come to fruition. Last year and this year, Senator Barbara Boxer dropped bills into the Senate. This year, Congressman McKeon decided that based on the entire earmark issue and having gotten a lot of pressure from the Republican leadership, he decided that this was an earmark. And what we finally arrived at was basically the sale of land down in San Bernardino. This is BLM-owned property that's on their for sale list. They intend to sell it anyway. And the mechanism that the legislation calls for is for the proceeds of the sale of that land to ultimately go to CEMEX. And the amount of money that CEMEX gets from the sale of this land would be decided by the director of the Department of Interior. At this point, since Buck hasn't dropped the bill and doesn't intend to, we are going to try and work this solely through the Senate. So Senator Boxer has got S-759, and it's a bill that we would ask you all to support. And as I said, back on the bar, there are handouts. The second sheet, the first sheet of the handout are the talking points that I've just gone over. The second sheet gives you information on how you can reach Senator Boxer. Senator Feinstein, and Congressman McKeon. And we would really, really appreciate it, for your own sake and for the sake of the community, if you'll reach out to these elected officials, let them know this is something that's important to you. It's something you don't want to see in your community, because once it starts, it's going to grow like a cancer. So we want to keep it out of here. Let the elected officials know, and we'll see what happens.
Well, let's give Andy a big hand.
Thank you.